Hi, it's been a little while, but finally getting back into Age of Sigmar battle. So 1k battle here. Nighthaunt there, but it's not my Nighthaunt. So it's someone else's. I was taking my Nurgle. Now, it was just 1k of Nurgle. It wasn't really a well thought out list like I'd normally take. It was just really what I could get into a small case because at the time, still didn't want to lift anything heavy after the surgery. Now it's much better, so I'm okay taking whatever now. But in my army, what I had was a Lord of Plagues as the general, and on that I'd taken Overpowering Stench as a command trait, which means enemies immediately around me have to re-roll sixes to hit. I thought, well, that'd be quite useful against anything. Some things get bonuses when they get sixes to hit. In fact, actually, Nighthaunt do as well because their sixes are mortal wounds. But there's various armies that'll have something where sixes to hit do something extra good. So I thought, well, let's just get rid of that. Or at least vastly reduce it. Also, Rustfang as the relic. So subtract 1 from an armor save permanently for the battle during each of my hero phases or combat phases. I forget now. Hero phases. And I can do that once per hero phase, but I can only do it to the same unit once. I can't keep doing it. Really useful against, but particularly useful against Nighthaunts because they get an unmodifiable armor save. So removing what armor save they do have is really good. And then Festus, who's my wizard in this, and I took the spell Cloying Quagmire. What that does, if I cast that, then it allows me to roll a d6 on a unit. If I roll equal to or greater than their armor save, then it'll suffer mortal wounds. So really nice. Again, Nighthaunt, almost everything has a 4+ armor save, so it's 50-50. So not that I took it specifically for Nighthaunt, but you know, it's quite nice. Against elite units in general, there's always going to be, or there's very likely to be some units with a good armor save. So useful for things like that. My opponent had 3 heroes, Knight of Shrouds and Ethereal Steed as the general with, I always forget the name of the command trait, but the one that allows you to raise up D3 slain models during a hero phase. And I forget which relic. And a Spirit Torment and a Guardian of Souls. And their units were a unit of 6 Spirit Host, 20 Chain Rasp Horde, 5 Hex Wraiths, and 4 Glaive Wraith Stalkers. Now, it's very much based on the models that come in the box set. Personally, I wouldn't advise 4 Glaive Wraith Stalkers. I don't think that's quite enough to do serious damage. But anyway, there we go. I plonked the Feculent Narmal right in the middle of the battlefield, as I generally would. And, you know, I got to go first. And I elected for my opponents to take the first turn because, I mean, I know Nighthaunt better than any other army because that's what I've been playing for quite a while and looking at. And there's nothing he can do to damage me in the first turn. The worst he can do is race forwards, but that's fine. Then I can race forwards and charge there. So always I would want to have my opponent go first if I don't think they can do me any serious damage. Apart from anything else, not only does it allow me to react to what they're going to do, but it means that I'm more likely to be able to get charging. The battle plan we used for this was from the heavens, so during the battle round 2, some meteors would land, which would then be worth victory points. So my plan here was have the Chaos Warriors, and they're not the most mobile, of course, but to have the Chaos Warriors just poking about to be able to capture it. Hopefully it'd land in the middle, but we would see. So opponent's first turn just basically moved forward with an awful lot of stuff. Then there wasn't a great deal they could do. They cast Mystic Shield on the Hex Wraiths in the magic phase, which is, you know, and that got off. Beyond that, there wasn't really a lot they could do. So then I had my turn, moved up with everything. Remember, I can, if I run with a unit and it ends up within 7 inches of the Feculent Narmal, I can still charge later that phase. So that was the plan there. Move the Nurgle Chaos Knights and the Putrid Blight Kings up towards the main part of the army over there. Sort of kept, I've moved the Chaos Warriors technically slightly up just in case they were needed for support. But other than that, just moved the characters up as well. Made a mistake. There's many mistakes I made in this battle. I shall go through those as I make them. Puskal Blight Lords moved up as well. Not quite sure whether I wanted to charge the Chain Rasp or the Glaive Wraith Stalkers. But quite frankly, in the end, didn't get any charges off. So that was really annoying, but never mind. Then battle round 2 came up. And the meteors both landed on the extreme right-hand side, which, as the battle pans out, you'll see, ended up being pretty good for me. I suppose if they'd have gone on the extreme left-hand side, it might have been better. It's difficult to say. But anyway, so we rolled off. I got to have the first turn. So at this point, I did manage to move much more closely. And you can see my first error potentially here. I've got my characters, which are both on foot, hanging very much back. And I wanted at least the Lord of Plagues to be right in there. I mean, they buff the Putrid Blight Kings apart from anything else and moving into there. The first turn I'd managed to roll on the Cycle of Corruption, I probably should have said there, and get +1 to wound. I'd wanted to cast a spell in the first turn to be able to change it, because the ideal one you want on that Cycle of Corruption is number 1, which gives you +2 inches to movement, but didn't get it off. So at this turn, in turn 2, I'm now on the one where enemy models that are within one, or any models within 1 inch of terrain, take potentially mortal wounds on a 4+, but you know, that didn't really do any good either. So yeah, it's got the charges in. So in the end, I charged with my Blight Lords into the Chain Rasp Horde. Perhaps I should have just taken out the Glaive Wraith Stalkers first of all. I would have taken those out. But as I say, this was the first of many errors. The Putrid Blight Kings and Chaos Knights charging in, of course, left, you know, the characters were left behind. And the Lord of Plagues was out of range of the Putrid Blight Kings, so couldn't even buff them. So that was a bit of a mistake. And the Chaos Warriors just moved. Now that the Meteors have landed, they made a beeline for those for my Meteor. At this point, you know, in terms of the battles, it didn't go brilliantly. I managed to kill a few of the Chain Rasp Horde. Did manage to kill the Hex Race off. I mean, at the end of the day, I've got my Chaos Knights going in, charging in. They've got glaives, so that gives them an extra bonus. They'll do, their glaives will be have a rend value, which they don't normally, and 2 damage. So those, along with the Putrid Blight Kings, absolutely did the hell out of the X-rays. I made sure that my Putrid Blight Kings didn't get within 3 inches of the Spirit Host. I didn't want to be countered there or have a pile-in on me. And then so it's the Nighthaunt player's turn. The Hex Rays have gone. The characters all move up towards the Knights. You know, there's a Knight being killed here as well. And the Spirit Host very much towards the Putrid Blight Kings. And the Glaive Wraith Stalkers are eyeing up the Blight Lords as well. And you know, Glaive Wraith Stalkers charge into the Blight Lords. All 3 characters charge into the Chaos Knights, what's left of that unit. Spirit Host charges the Putrid Blight Kings. This is me in trouble now. Putrid Blight Kings are mortal, so they don't have Disgustingly Resilient. Against a unit that's going to do a lot of mortal wounds, they don't really have anything. But they have a lot of wounds. They do have a lot of wounds. So I thought I would still potentially be okay there. But no, I mean, the Knights were completely wiped out. They didn't really manage to. They did a wound to one of the characters, but then that just got healed back up. And the Putrid Blight Kings had a couple left, so they were able to act as a little speed bump very briefly. The Puskor Blight Lord, one of those died out of the 2 that I had. So it was all looking a little bit dicey. But in the third turn, I rolled to go first again. So I decided to retreat with the Puskor Blight Lords. My thinking at this point, here's what I was thinking. I'm thinking, this is all going south here. I've made a terrible mistake. And the army itself, as I say, I determined that I'm never taking these models again. It was only really what I could fit in. It wasn't a coordinated army. But the Chaos Warriors obviously were going to carry on to the Meteor. Now, at this point, they were actually going to be able to get victory points. With the way this battle plan works, at the end of each of your turns, if you have captured a Meteor, and to capture it, it's how many models you've got within 6 inches of it compared to your opponent. So I'm the only one with models within 6 inches at this point. So at the end of this turn, I am going to get 3 victory points for it, because you get a number of victory points equal to the battle round. So I'm going to get 3. My opponent's not going to get any, because they can't get any over there at this point. So the thinking was, I'm thinking the Spirit Host, I know they're going to keep moving forwards. They've got to fight the Putrid Blight Kings for a start. The only units that, you know, if I stayed with my Blight Lord where it was, the Chain Rasp Horde and the Glaive Wraith Stalkers may have finished it off. A decent chance of finishing it off. And then they may move over to the Meteor. So I thought, I don't know whether, I thought to myself, like, if I stay there, they're going to probably stay there for one more turn, and it helps avoid get it over there. But at the same time, if I move it away, which is what I did, maybe I can draw those units away. Because, and this is where I made a big mistake, I know that there's a command ability for Nighthaunt. The general can basically teleport a unit as long as they can place them anywhere they like within 9 inches of the general. So what he could do is teleport either of the units, the Glaive Wraith Stalkers or the Chain Rasp Horde, to the other side of him, and that'll be a greater distance that they could move on their own in one turn. But what I failed to recognise is that my opponent wasn't aware of this. He hadn't brought the Nighthaunt book in, so he was going by a little list, and he didn't realise that, and I wasn't about to tell him. So potentially I should have just stayed there and held them up, but I didn't. I sort of ran away. So when it came to the Nighthaunt turn, you know, they had finished the Blight Kings off at that point. The Glaive Wraith Stalkers went after my Blight Lord, which was never going to work. But the Chain Rasp Horde, I mean, maybe the other way around, but the Chain Rasp Horde, I suppose, were closer. So they realised what I was doing and made a beeline for the Meteor, because at this point I've now got 3 victory points. But, you know, my army is basically gone at this point. I've got 1 Blight Lord over there on the left. I've got my unit of 10 Chaos Warriors, and I've got my 2 heroes. If this game just went on until there was a victory, I'd be dead. There's nothing I can do at this point, realistically. So it was all about getting the victory points in. I had to... Obviously, I've got my 3 in the bank. I know my opponent isn't going to be able to get that the Meteor in their deployment zone until turn 5. So they can only capture 5 victory points. So if I get... This is the way I was thinking. And what I'm just going to do is, because everything's shifting over to this way, I'm just going to move my camera over there. Because that I know I'm going to get 3 victory points in this turn. In turn 4, I really ought to be... They shouldn't be able to stop me getting 4 victory points there as well. So that'll be 7 victory points. My opponent will get 5 victory points in the last turn up there. So the only thing that can stop me winning is, can my opponent capture my Meteor as well in the 5th turn before I can take the victory points in the 5th turn. That's the trick. So, Nighthaunt players' turn, so they sort of moved forward there. The dimensions a bit... I think I got the characters slightly... So I've moved the characters out of the way there. I think I got them slightly too close. The Spirit Hawk were able to charge into the Chaos Warriors, but they were more than 3 inches away from the characters. It may not quite look like that. But my Chaos Warriors have Rune Shields, which gives them a 5-up save against mortal wounds. So against the Mighty Spirit Host, they're not that vulnerable. You know, they're pretty good for that. So they did manage to hold. There wasn't very much damage done. I managed to do some damage to the Spirit Host as well. But then turn 4, the Nighthaunt player got the first turn. This was a bit of a disaster because I thought to myself, if I could have got it, I would definitely have got the 4 points there and I could move away. But in the end, this may have worked out okay. So they obviously got the Chain Rasp Horde moving close to the Meteor. Still not quite gotten any models within 6 inches. They moved the Knight of Shrouds. They moved the other heroes basically forwards as well. And to get the Knight of Shrouds in a position to be able to charge the Chaos Warriors, which is indeed what happened. So now I've got some Spirit Host and Knight of Shrouds. There's 5 Spirit Hosts, I think, at this point. Knight of Shrouds on the Chaos Warriors. Little bit dodgier now, you know, the Knight of Shrouds and the Spirit Host together could do some damage here. But I just need to hold. Chaos Warriors have got 2 wounds each, 4 up armor save, and that 5 up against mortal wounds. So, you know, and the Spirit Host, as long as I can whittle them down. I mean, at this point, there's 5 Spirit Hosts and 1 Knight of Shroud. There's 6 enemy there. As long as I've got more, well, and they're not even all within 6 inches of the Meteor. As long as I've got more within 6 inches of the Meteor, then we're okay. We're okay. So they did manage to kill a few more Chaos Warriors, but not that many. Again, I was holding up there. So in my turn, I basically just ran them away. The Chaos Warriors are there to capture that objective. They are not likely to cause more wounds against my opponent than they will on me. And it's all about numbers anyway. The Spirit Host have got 3 wounds each. The Knight of Shrouds have got 6 wounds. My Chaos Warriors have got 2 wounds each. So even if I competed on number of wounds caused, I'm going to lose more models than they do. So it's all about keeping that objective up. So I moved them away so that I could guarantee at this point I would get the 4 victory points for turn 4. So I would definitely be on 7 then. At that point, it's really just a case of making sure my opponent doesn't get 5 in the last phase. Or that I roll to go first in turn 5, grab my 5, at which point I've got 12. That's it, I can't lose. So I also moved my Lord of Plagues and Festus up to the Spirit Host. Not necessarily expecting to do a load of damage now. They're unsupported, they're not going to be that good. But at the same time, it's you know, it makes it more difficult for them. They can't charge my Chaos Warriors. If they try and retreat from that combat, well, they can't charge then. So that was the idea there, charged into those. Also meant that that I would be able to still kill a few more Spirit Host, sorry, which is what I did. Pusgold Blightlord just moved across. They'd finished off, sorry, I should have said. They finished off the Glaive Wraith Stalkers the previous turn. The fact that it took them 2 rounds of combat to do it was a bit embarrassing, but there you go, that's what happened. And at this point, it's just a frantic race. Can I hold on? That's all it is now. You know, if this was just a straightforward pitch battle, I've lost. I'm well beaten. I've made many errors. But it's all about the victory points. And this is the first game of Age of Sigmar I've now played where, not where we paid attention to objectives. There have been some other ones where we have. But this is the first one where I've made decisions based entirely around acquiring victory points to win the game. So, you know, they did have some damage to the Spirit Host. You know, they managed to do some damage there. Against the, you know, turn 5 came along. And this is where I'm thinking to myself, if I get the first turn here, I've won. Because I will just not do anything with those Chaos Warriors other than make sure that I've got more of them within 6 inches of that meteor than my opponent. Dead easy. Take my 5 points, that's 12 points. Even if my opponent wipes me out in the next turn, they'll get 10 victory points. I've got 12. So it's an instant win. Unfortunately, the Nighthaunt player got the first turn there. So what happened was, a bit weird that the Spirit Torment looks like he's going over the Spirit Host. Is the guy in white, but that's because there's not actually that many Spirit Hosts, it looks there. The Chain Rasp Horde went over to the Meteor, so they were definitely going to get 5 victory points in this turn. The question was, would they be able to take 5 victory points from me? All right. So what they did, obviously they're charging in here. The Spirit Host couldn't really. The Guardian of Souls charged into my Lord of Plagues as well, and actually got 10 on the charge roll. Now for Nighthaunt, that means they get a free round of combat. So they did a bit of damage there, and they still got their turn later on. Knight of Shrouds and Spirit Torment into the Chaos Warriors. So I basically, at this point, there was only, within 6 inches, there was only like a couple of their models. I just needed 3 Chaos Warriors left at the end of this lot. And then I'd be okay. So I just had to stand up against them, which, you know, thankfully I did. So when it got to my turn 5, I just moved the Chaos Warriors. I retreated to the other side of the Meteor so that I still had 3 with it. It's all I needed, 3 Chaos Warriors within it. But more than 3 inches away from the Knight of Shrouds, of course, which is what I managed to do. Festus died. Lord of Plagues, actually, in this turn died as well. So all I had on the battlefield were a few scabby Chaos Warriors and 1 Blight Lord. If there'd have been another turn, I'd have been finished, I'm sure. Well, I would have been finished, let's face facts. But fortunately, it ended there. That's 5 turns. And so I won by having... in fact, actually, no, it was the same number. That's right. I had the same number of models on the Meteor. So no one captured the one at the bottom, which meant I ended up with my 7 victory points. My opponent ended up with the 5 victory points. But that was still a victory for me. So... that's the interesting thing about Age of Sigmar as well. It's the first time I've been able to take advantage of this. The fact that it's not just about, you know, trying to table your opponent. You can be well beaten, as you can see. I'm well beaten here, and yet I can still win the battle because it's all about those objectives. Capturing those objectives for a certain amount of time. You can always imagine that the reinforcements came later, or you scuttled away the treasure, or whatever it was. But that's what adds a little frisson to it. And it's also why, because I have very attacking armies, I'm sometimes at a disadvantage, because if there is an objective in my deployment zone that I feel the need to capture, because I tend to rush towards my opponent, I sort of need to keep something behind, which reduces, particularly in a 1,000-point game, it's even worse, because it's a proportionally larger bit of your army. But I did have a cunning plan about that. I've played another Nurgle game since then, and although I may not do a report on that because it was I won, but I won very easily. There's going to be a rematch, so I will report on that one. So there should be a report of that out next week as well. So there we go. But in terms of mistakes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, it just goes to show what I said. Most of the armies lists, all the army lists apart from this one I've come up with, I've thought carefully about and I've come up with a general strategy. This was just which models can I put in a little case so that I'm not carrying anything too heavy. And it didn't work. It didn't work at all. Because I didn't have that overall strategy, I wasted my heroes. If my Lord of Plagues had been in the mix along with the Chaos Knights and the Blight Kings, then that would have been amazing. They'd be buffing the Blight Kings. They're useful in their own right as well, and they debuff other things around me. Because remember, Spirit Hosts, if they roll a 6 to hit, they have to re-roll it, which massively reduces the number of mortal wounds they can get. You know, so I wasn't using that. I wasn't really thinking through that. It was just very uncoordinated because I hadn't come up with a coordinated list with a general strategy. But when you do, as you'll hopefully see in the next one, even though I haven't played that game yet, but I know, but that's an army list I have thought about, then you should hopefully see something different. But anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe for further content, and until next time, I'll see you later.